Marcus Chen stood at the entrance of Riverside High School, his duffel bag slung over one shoulder. The building looked smaller than he remembered, almost fragile compared to the reinforced bunkers and military installations he'd called home for the past 3 years. He was 17 now, though his eyes carried the weight of someone much older. The automatic doors slid open with a soft hiss that made his hand twitch toward his hip, where a plasma rifle should have been. There was nothing there now except the worn fabric of his civilian jeans. He forced himself to breathe slowly, counting to 4 the way the military psychologist had taught him. Civilian life. Safe. No threats. The hallway exploded with noise as students rushed between classes. Their laughter echoed off the lockers, mixing with the slam of doors and the shuffle of feet. Marcus pressed himself against the wall, his heart hammering. Too many people, too many angles. His training screamed at him to find cover, to assess threats, to establish a defensive position. A group of students brushed past him, barely noticing the new arrival. One of them, a tall boy with perfectly styled hair, bumped Marcus's shoulder without apologizing. Marcus's hand shot out on instinct, catching the boy's wrist with a grip that made him yelp in surprise. "Watch it, freak," the boy snarled, yanking his arm away and rubbing his wrist. His friends circled around, puffing up like threatened birds. Marcus recognized the posture immediately. Territorial display, dominance behavior. Nothing like the cold efficiency of enemy soldiers, but aggression nonetheless. Marcus said nothing. He'd learned long ago that silence was often the best response. The boys muttered insults and moved on, casting glances over their shoulders. Marcus's hand was still shaking. 3 years fighting in the Zephyrin War, defending human colonies from alien invasion, and he nearly broke a civilian teenager's wrist for bumping into him. The main office was a maze of administrative staff and humming computers. A tired-looking woman with graying hair looked up from her desk and smiled weakly. "You must be Marcus Chen. Welcome back to Riverside. We've got your schedule ready." She handed him a paper with his classes listed. English literature, Earth history, advanced physics, physical education. Normal classes for normal students who'd never seen the flash of plasma fire or held the hand of a dying friend. Marcus folded the paper and nodded his thanks. "There's a peer buddy program," the woman continued, adjusting her glasses. "We've assigned someone to show you around for your first week, help you readjust to school life." Before Marcus could respond, a girl appeared in the doorway. She had dark skin, bright eyes, and wore a science club jacket covered in pins. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm here for the new student." "Perfect timing, Zara. This is Marcus Chen." "Marcus, meet Zara Williams. She'll help you navigate your first day back." Zara extended her hand with an easy confidence. Marcus hesitated before shaking it, conscious of his grip this time. "Back?" Zara asked, tilting her head. "You used to go here?" 3 years ago, Marcus replied. His voice sounded rough, like he'd forgotten how to make small talk. "Before I enlisted?" Zara's eyes widened slightly. "You're military? But you're like our age. How did you—" She stopped herself, seeming to remember something. "Oh, the war." They lowered the age requirement for volunteers. Marcus nodded. The Zephyron had attacked 3 years ago, sweeping through the outer colonies with devastating speed. Earth's military had been overwhelmed. They'd opened enlistment to anyone over 14 who could pass the physical and mental tests. Thousands of teenagers had volunteered, including Marcus. It had seemed heroic at the time. Now he wasn't sure what it had been. "Come on," Zara said, recovering her cheerful demeanor. "Let me show you to your locker. First period doesn't start for another 15 minutes. They walked through hallways decorated with banners celebrating upcoming events. Homecoming dance, fall festival, math competition. The normalcy of it all felt surreal. Marcus tried to focus on Zara's commentary about teachers and class difficulty, but his attention kept fragmenting. He noticed the security cameras, the exit routes, the structural weak points in the building, old habits. "So what was it like?" Zara asked suddenly. "Out there, I mean. Fighting aliens. We see stuff on the news, but it always feels so sanitized." Marcus's jaw tightened. Images flashed through his mind unbidden. The screech of Zephron warriors, the smell of burnt flesh and melted metal, the weight of his rifle as he'd held the line on Kepler Station while civilians evacuated. It was necessary, he said finally. Zara sensed she'd hit a nerve and changed the subject smoothly. Well, physics should be pretty easy for you then. I bet you've seen more practical applications than any of us have read about in textbooks. She wasn't wrong. Marcus had learned physics by calculating trajectory angles under fire, understanding energy shields through their weaknesses, and mastering propulsion systems to keep dropships running during combat operations. But he doubted the teacher would appreciate him explaining how plasma melts through hull plating at different rates depending on composition. They reached his locker, number 247. Zara showed him the combination lock, and Marcus opened it on the first try, his muscle memory adapting instantly to the simple mechanism. Inside was empty except for a small welcome packet from the school administration. Your first class is English with Mr. Davies, Zara said, checking his schedule. He's pretty cool, but he loves symbolism and metaphor. Everything means something deeper to him. She grinned. I've got chemistry first period, but I'll catch up with you at lunch. Cafeteria is on the second floor, can't miss it. The bell rang, a shrill electronic sound that made Marcus flinch. Students began flowing toward classrooms with practiced efficiency. Zara waved and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Marcus alone with his schedule and his thoughts. He found room 204 without difficulty. Mr. Davies was a middle-aged man with a beard and kind eyes. He looked up as Marcus entered and smiled warmly. Ah, our new student. Marcus, right? Welcome. Grab any open seat. The classroom was arranged in a semicircle, desks facing a central podium where Mr. Davies stood. Marcus chose a seat near the back corner, positioning himself where he could see both exits and had a solid wall behind him. Some of the other students glanced at him curiously, but most were absorbed in their phones or conversations. Mr. Davies began the lesson by discussing a novel Marcus had never heard of. Something about a dystopian society where books were burned. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. Humans had nearly been exterminated by an alien species, yet here they were discussing fictional oppression. But he listened anyway, trying to engage with the material, trying to care about literary themes and character development. A student raised her hand. Mr. Davies, isn't the fire captain kind of like a soldier, following orders without questioning? The teacher nodded enthusiastically. Excellent observation, Jennifer. The book definitely explores themes of blind obedience versus moral responsibility. What do we owe to authority versus what we owe to our own conscience? Marcus felt eyes turning toward him. Someone must have already spread the word about the military kid. Mr. Davies, to his credit, didn't put Marcus on the spot, but the question hung in the air anyway. What did soldiers owe to authority? Marcus had followed orders that resulted in death, both enemy and friendly. He'd done things he'd been told were necessary for the survival of humanity. Were they right? Were they moral? He didn't know anymore. The class continued, but Marcus felt himself drifting. The wall seemed too close, the air too warm. He focused on his breathing again, counting silently. 4 in, hold 4, 4 out. He made it through the period without incident, though by the end his shirt was damp with sweat. As students filed out, Mr. Davies called out, "Marcus, could you stay back for a moment?" Marcus's stomach tightened, but he approached the teacher's desk. Mr. Davies studied him with those kind eyes, and Marcus wondered how much the school had told the staff about his background. "I just wanted to say welcome back," Mr. Davies said gently. "I know transitioning from military service to civilian life, especially at your age, can be incredibly challenging. If you ever need extensions on assignments or someone to talk to, my door is always open." Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. The kindness felt almost harder to handle than hostility would have been. "Thank you, sir." "Just Mr. Davies is fine," the teacher smiled. "And Marcus, you're not alone in this. Remember that." Marcus left the classroom feeling something crack in his chest. He had 4 more periods to survive before he could go home to the small apartment, where his mother waited with worried eyes and careful questions. 4 more periods of pretending he was just another student, just another teenager worried about grades and social status. The hallway felt longer than any battlefield had ever been. The second period was Earth history with Ms. Rodriguez, an energetic woman who spoke with her hands and filled the board with rapid notes. Marcus slid into another back corner seat, noting that 2 other students had the same instinct. Self-preservation was universal even in peacetime. Ms. Rodriguez was discussing the early space colonization era, the optimistic years before humanity encountered hostile alien life. In 2087, the first permanent settlement was established on Mars, she explained, her marker squeaking against the whiteboard. Humanity believed we were alone in the universe. We thought our biggest challenges would be terraforming and resource management. A student near the front laughed. Guess they were wrong about that. Indeed, Ms. Rodriguez said, her expression sobering. First contact with the Zephron Collective in 2141 changed everything. Our entire understanding of our place in the universe shifted overnight. Marcus's hands clenched under his desk. 2141. That was when the first colony ship disappeared. 2 years later, the Zephron launched their full invasion. By then, he'd been 13, watching news reports with his mother as colony after colony went dark. The faces of missing colonists haunted the broadcasts. Entire populations vanished or slaughtered. The war's been going on for 5 years now. A girl with purple hair commented. Do you think we're winning? Ms. Rodriguez hesitated, choosing her words carefully. The military reports suggest we've reached a stalemate. The Zephron advance has been halted, and we've reclaimed several outer colonies, but the cost has been significant. Significant. Marcus almost laughed at the sanitized language. He'd seen the cost counted in body bags and memorial services, in colonies reduced to radioactive ash, in the screams of soldiers who'd never make it home. Significant didn't begin to cover it. Does anyone know someone who served? Ms. Rodriguez asked the class. The war has touched almost every family in some way. Hands rose around the room. A boy mentioned his uncle, a pilot who'd lost his leg in a bombing run. A girl talked about her sister, who worked as a medic on a hospital ship. Their stories were clean, distant, third-hand accounts that kept the real horror at arm's length. I served, Marcus heard himself say. The words fell into the classroom like stones into still water. Every head turned. Ms. Rodriguez's eyes widened. You did? But you're 17, Marcus finished. I enlisted 3 years ago when they opened youth recruitment. Spent most of my time on Kepler Station and did 2 tours on the Zephron border worlds. The classroom went silent. These students had grown up with the war as background noise, something that happened far away to other people. Now one of those other people sat among them. What was it like? The purple-haired girl asked, leaning forward. Marcus considered the question. What could he say that they'd understand? That every day he'd woken up uncertain if he'd see another sunset? That he'd learned to sleep through artillery fire but still jolted awake at the sound of a door closing? That he'd killed Zephron soldiers who were probably no different from him, just fighting for their own people? It was loud, he said finally. And cold. Space stations aren't built for comfort. Mostly it was boring, actually. Long stretches of nothing interrupted by moments of absolute terror. Did you ever see a Zephron up close? A boy asked. Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah, many times. He didn't elaborate. He didn't mention the scouting mission where he'd come face to face with a Zephron warrior in a crashed transport. The creature had been wounded, bleeding their strange silver blood. They'd stared at each other for 5 seconds that felt like hours. Then Marcus had pulled the trigger because that's what soldiers did. Ms. Rodriguez gently steered the conversation back to the lesson, but Marcus could feel the weight of curious stares for the rest of the period. He'd made himself visible and he immediately regretted it. Invisibility was safer, anonymity was easier. When the bell rang, several students approached him with questions, but Marcus grabbed his bag and moved quickly toward the door. He couldn't handle their curiosity, their excitement. They treated war like an adventure story, something thrilling and heroic. They didn't understand that heroism was just terror with better publicity. Third period was advanced physics with Dr. Nakamura, an older man with white hair and a reputation for being brilliant but demanding. The classroom was smaller, filled with students who actually wanted to be there. Lab equipment lined the walls and complex equations covered multiple whiteboards. Today we're discussing faster-than-light travel, Dr. Nakamura announced, specifically the limitations of current jump drive technology and theoretical improvements. This was familiar territory for Marcus. He'd spent countless hours in the engine rooms of military vessels, learning systems from engineers who needed every hand available. Jump drives were temperamental beasts, powerful but unstable. The slightest miscalculation could tear a ship apart or leave it stranded between stars. Dr. Nakamura drew a diagram of a jump drive core. "The energy requirements are immense," he explained. "We're literally punching holes in space-time. The current models require 48 hours to charge between jumps, which limits tactical flexibility. Military ships can jump faster," a student commented. "I heard they've got upgraded drives. Classified technology," Dr. Nakamura said with a small smile. "Though rumors suggest military vessels can reduce that time to 6 hours with improved power cores and better heat dissipation." 4 hours, Marcus said quietly. Then, realizing he'd spoken aloud, he felt heat rise to his face. "Sorry, I've heard it's closer to 4 hours for modern military frigates." Dr. Nakamura turned to him with interest. "And your source for this information?" "Personal experience," Marcus admitted. "I served on several military vessels, helped with engine maintenance and emergency repairs." The teacher's eyebrows rose. "Fascinating. Perhaps you could share some practical insights with the class. Textbook knowledge is valuable, but real-world application is invaluable." Marcus found himself at the front of the classroom, chalk in hand, explaining the hybrid cooling systems that allowed military jump drives to cycle faster. He drew from memory, showing how the plasma conduits were routed to minimize heat buildup, how emergency coolant systems worked, how engineers had shaved time off jump sequences by optimizing the charging algorithms. For the first time since returning, Marcus felt comfortable. This was concrete information, practical knowledge. No one asked him how it felt or what horrors he'd seen. They asked about specifications, about engineering solutions, about the science that kept ships running in hostile space. Dr. Nakamura watched with approval. "Excellent explanation. You've clearly got a strong grasp of applied physics. Have you considered studying engineering?" Marcus hadn't considered much beyond surviving each day, but he nodded anyway. "Maybe. Haven't really thought about the future yet." "Well, if you need a recommendation for university programs, come see me," the teacher said warmly. "Talent like yours shouldn't go to waste." As Marcus returned to his seat, he caught a few students looking at him with something other than morbid curiosity. Respect, maybe, or at least interest in something beyond his status as a veteran. It was a small relief. The lesson continued, but Marcus's mind wandered. University programs, a future. These were concepts he'd stopped believing in somewhere between his first combat drop and his discharge papers. He'd survived, which was more than many of his friends could say. But surviving and living were different things. Fourth period was physical education, and Marcus dreaded it more than any class so far. Coach Williams was a former college athlete, broad-shouldered and loud with a whistle that could shatter glass. The gym smelled of sweat and rubber, familiar yet alien. "All right, people," Coach Williams bellowed. "Today we're doing fitness assessments. I want to see where everyone's at. We'll start with a mile run, then move to strength exercises." The class groaned collectively. Marcus changed into the gym clothes his mother had bought, feeling exposed in the t-shirt and shorts. His body was different from the other students. Leaner, harder, marked with scars that raised questions he didn't want to answer. A burn mark from plasma splash on his left shoulder, a long scar across his ribs from shrapnel. Evidence of a life most of these kids couldn't imagine. "You're the military kid, right?" a muscular boy asked as they lined up for the run. His name was Tyler, if Marcus remembered correctly. "Bet you can smoke this mile easy." Marcus shrugged. He'd run plenty of miles in full combat gear, carrying a 60-pound pack. This would be easy physically. Mentally was another question. Coach Williams blew his whistle and they were off. Marcus let his body remember the rhythm, the breathing pattern, the steady pace that could be maintained for hours if necessary. He passed student after student, their labored breathing and heavy footfalls falling behind. The mile ended in just over 5 minutes. Marcus wasn't even breathing hard. The coach checked his stopwatch twice, frowning. "Chen, that's an impressive time. You train much?" "Some," Marcus say in the punishment runs for minor infracti. Lunch period arrived like a reprieve from battle. Marcus navigated the crowded cafeteria. His tray loaded with food his body insisted he needed even though his appetite had vanished. The noise was overwhelming. Hundreds of voices merged into a wall of sound punctuated by laughter, arguments, and the clatter of dishes. He spotted Zara waving from a table near the windows and made his way over, carefully avoiding collisions with students who moved with the careless confidence of people who'd never had to watch their backs. Survived the morning, Zara observed with a grin as Marcus sat down. That's something. How are the classes? Different, Marcus said, poking at his food. Physics was okay. The teacher wants me to share practical knowledge. Dr. Nakamura's great, Zara agreed. She gestured around the table at 3 other students. This is my usual crew. That's James, he's in robotics club. Sophie does debate team. And Andre's our resident artist. They each nodded greetings. James, a skinny kid with thick glasses, immediately leaned forward. Zara said you were military. Is it true you actually fought aliens? Marcus suppressed a sigh. Of course, that would be the first question. Yeah, for about 3 years. What are they like? Sophie asked. She had curious eyes that reminded Marcus of journalists who'd visited the base, always hunting for good stories. The Zephyron, I mean. Are they really as terrifying as the news makes them seem? Marcus considered his answer carefully. They're soldiers like we were, fighting for their reasons, whatever those are. Command never told us much about their motivations. We just knew they wanted our colony worlds and wouldn't stop until they had them or we stopped them. That's so diplomatic, Andre said with a slight smile. You sound like a politician. I sound like someone who's tired of talking about it, Marcus replied, more sharply than intended. The table went quiet. He forced himself to soften his tone. Sorry, it's just been a long morning. Zara smoothly changed the subject. So I was thinking, since you're good at physics, maybe you could help tutor me? I'm struggling with the quantum mechanics unit. Sure, Marcus agreed, grateful for the shift. Quantum stuff makes more sense when you've seen it applied to weapon systems and shields. See, that's exactly what I need, Zara said enthusiastically. Practical applications. The textbook just throws equations at us without explaining why they matter. James pushed his glasses up. Have you seen the new military recruitment ads? They're really pushing the tech angle now. Like a come see advanced technology firsthand kind of messaging. Marcus's jaw tightened. Yeah, that's how they got a lot of us. Made it sound exciting. Cutting-edge science, defending humanity, all that. Was it not? Sophie asked. Exciting, I mean. It was terrifying, Marcus said bluntly. Anyone who tells you war's exciting is either lying or selling something. It's boring terror punctuated by moments of pure chaos where you're just trying not to die or get your friends killed. The table fell silent again. Marcus realized he kept killing the conversation with truth no one wanted to hear. These kids wanted sanitized stories, hero narratives. They didn't want the reality of what war actually looked like. But you saved people, right? Andre said quietly. That has to count for something. Marcus thought about the civilians he'd evacuated from Kepler Station. Families running with children in their arms. Elderly people who could barely walk. Everyone desperate to reach the transport ships before the Zephyron breached the final defenses. He'd held that line with his squad, buying time with bullets and blood. Yeah, he admitted. We saved people. That's the only part that makes any of it bearable. Zara seemed to sense he needed a break from interrogation. Okay, new topic. Are you going to join any clubs or teams? Tyler mentioned you crushed the gym assessment. Marcus shrugged. Haven't thought about it. Still figuring out how to be a student again. Well, if you're interested in applied science, we've got a great engineering club, James offered. We're building a scaled model of a colony ship. Could use someone with actual spaceship experience. Maybe, Marcus said noncommittally. The idea of building instead of destroying had appeal, but the thought of committing to regular social interaction still felt daunting. Across the cafeteria, Derek and his crew were watching Marcus's table. Derek said something that made his friends laugh, and one of them pantomimed shooting with finger guns. Marcus recognized the mockery but chose to ignore it. High school social hierarchies seemed ridiculous compared to actual survival scenarios. Don't mind Derek, Sophie said, following Marcus's gaze. He's been king of the school since sophomore year. Doesn't like competition for attention. I'm not competing for anything, Marcus muttered. Just trying to get through the day. Yeah, well, he doesn't see it that way, Andre warned. Derek's dad is some big defense contractor. Made a fortune off the war. I think having an actual veteran here threatens his whole identity as a military expert by proxy. Marcus found that darkly amusing. Kids playing at understanding war while real veterans tried to forget it, but he kept the thought to himself. The lunch period wound down and students began filtering toward their next classes. Marcus checked his schedule. Study hall, then chemistry, then one more class before he could escape. He was already exhausted and the day wasn't over. Study hall was held in the library, a large space filled with books and computer terminals. The supervising teacher, Mr. Patterson, barely looked up as students filed in. This was meant to be free time for homework or reading. Marcus found a quiet corner and pulled out his English textbook, trying to focus on the assignment Mr. Davies had given. The words swam on the page. Something about analyzing themes of rebellion and conformity. Marcus read the same paragraph 3 times without absorbing any of it. His mind kept drifting, replaying moments from the war. The faces of squad mates who hadn't made it home. The sound of alarms when the station was breached. The weight of impossible decisions. Mind if I sit here? Marcus looked up to find a girl with red hair and paint-stained fingers standing by his table. She looked familiar, but he couldn't place her. Go ahead, he said. She sat down and pulled out a sketchbook, immediately beginning to draw. Marcus returned to his reading or attempting to read. After a few minutes, he realized she was sketching him. Do you mind? She asked, noticing his attention. You've got an interesting face. Good bone structure, and your eyes are really expressive. I guess it's fine, Marcus said, unsure how to respond to being called interesting. You're an artist? Trying to be, she replied. I'm Lily, by the way. We have English together. I sit 2 rows ahead of you. Marcus nodded, placing her now. Sorry, I'm still learning names. Understandable. New school is hard enough without you know everything else. She made a vague gesture that seemed to encompass his military service without saying it directly. Marcus appreciated the discretion. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Lily sketched and Marcus made another futile attempt at reading. Eventually he gave up and just watched other students. They seemed so young, so carefree. Had he ever been like that? He couldn't remember. Can I ask you something? Lily said, not looking up from her drawing. And you can totally tell me to mind my business if you want. Okay, Marcus said cautiously. Do you regret it? Enlisting, I mean. Going to war when you were our age. Marcus considered the question seriously. It deserved a real answer, not a dismissive platitude. I don't know, he admitted. I did what I thought was right. Humanity needed defenders and I was capable. But the cost was higher than I expected. Not just the obvious stuff, but what it does to you inside. How it changes the way you see everything. Lily nodded slowly, her pencil moving across paper. My brother enlisted last year. He's 19. My parents are terrified, but he was determined. Said he wanted to make a difference. I hope he stays safe, Marcus said sincerely. And I hope when he comes back, he has people who understand that he'll be different. That's the hardest part, I think. Expecting people to just go back to normal when normal doesn't exist anymore. Is that why you're back in school? Trying to find normal? Marcus smiled without humor. I'm back in school because the military doctors said I needed structure and purpose outside of combat. Apparently 17-year-olds who've spent their teenage years fighting aren't great at adjusting to civilian life without help. Are they right? Probably, Marcus admitted. I don't sleep much. Loud noises make me jumpy. I keep assessing rooms for tactical advantages and threat vectors. So yeah, I need help adjusting. Lily finished her sketch and turned it around to show him. She'd captured something in his expression that Marcus hadn't realized showed. A deep weariness, yes, but also a determination that hadn't been broken. He looked like someone who'd been through hell but refused to stay there. That's really good, Marcus said, genuinely impressed. You've got talent. Thanks, Lily said, tearing the page out and offering it to him. Keep it. Consider it a welcome-back gift. Marcus took the drawing carefully, feeling something unexpected. Connection, maybe. Understanding from someone who wasn't trying to turn his experiences into entertainment or inspiration. Just genuine human empathy. Safety equipment. Mr. The final period was Introduction to Psychology with Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a younger teacher with kind eyes, and an office that Marcus had noticed was decorated with mental health resources. Someone had clearly briefed her about his background because she gave him a subtle nod when he entered, acknowledging without making a scene. The classroom was arranged in a circle, chairs facing each other. Marcus hesitated before choosing a seat where he could still see the door. Old habits refused to die quietly. Welcome, everyone, Dr. Mitchell began as the bell rang. Today we're going to discuss stress responses and how the human brain processes traumatic experiences. This is heavy material, so if anyone feels uncomfortable at any point, you're free to step outside and take a break. Marcus's stomach tightened. Of course the universe would schedule psychology for his first day back. Of course they'd be discussing trauma. Dr. Mitchell projected a diagram of the brain on the screen. When we experience something traumatic, our amygdala, the emotional center of our brain, gets activated. It triggers our fight or flight response. This was incredibly useful for our ancestors facing predators. But in modern contexts, this response can become problematic. A girl raised her hand. Is that what PTSD is? When your brain can't turn off the fight or flight response? Partially, Dr. Mitchell confirmed. Post-traumatic stress disorder is complex. It involves the brain getting stuck in survival mode even when the threat has passed. The hippocampus, which processes memories, can't properly file traumatic experiences. So instead of becoming past events, they feel like they're still happening. Marcus felt exposed, like the teacher was describing his life in clinical terms for everyone to examine. His nights spent jerking awake to phantom alarms. His inability to relax in crowds. The way his body stayed perpetually tensed for threats that no longer existed. Can people recover from PTSD? Another student asked. Absolutely, Dr. Mitchell said firmly. With proper support, therapy, and time, people can heal. The neural pathways can be rewired. It takes work, but recovery is possible and happens every day. Marcus wanted to believe her. He'd been in therapy since his discharge, talking to military psychologists who specialized in combat trauma. They'd taught him breathing exercises, grounding techniques, ways to manage the intrusive memories. Some days it helped. Other days he felt like he was drowning. Let's do an exercise, Dr. Mitchell suggested. Turn to the person next to you and discuss a time you felt stressed and how you handled it. This doesn't have to be trauma, just any stressful situation. Marcus turned to find himself facing a small girl with worried eyes. Her name tag read Emma. She looked as thrilled about this exercise as he felt. I'm not great at this stuff, Emma admitted quietly. Talking about feelings. Me either, Marcus agreed. That was something of an understatement. They sat in awkward silence for a moment before Emma spoke. I get really stressed during tests, like panic attack level stressed. My hands shake and I forget everything I studied. It's frustrating because I know the material, but my brain just freezes. Marcus nodded. That sounds hard. Do you do anything that helps? Deep breathing mostly. And sometimes I imagine I'm explaining the answers to my little brother. That makes it feel less scary somehow. She looked at Marcus expectantly. What about you? Marcus chose his words carefully. I get stressed in crowds. Too many people, too much noise. I handle it by finding quiet spaces when I can. Counting helps. Focusing on breathing. Reminding myself where I am and that I'm safe. Emma tilted her head. You're the military guy, right? Everyone's been talking about it. Yeah, Marcus confirmed. That must be really hard, she said with unexpected empathy. Coming back to normal life after something so intense. My uncle served in the war too. He says the hardest battles are the ones nobody sees, the ones in your own head. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. Your uncle sounds like a smart guy. He has his bad days, Emma said. But he's getting better. Says it helps to talk about it with other veterans, people who understand. Dr. Mitchell called the class back to attention. Thank you for sharing with each other. Remember, stress responses are natural and human. What matters is how we cope with them and support each other through difficult times. She transitioned into a lecture about healthy versus unhealthy coping mechanisms. Marcus tried to pay attention, taking notes on strategies he recognized from his own therapy. Exercise, social connection, creative outlets, professional help. All things his counselor had recommended. All things he'd been avoiding because they required vulnerability. Isolation is one of the worst coping mechanisms, Dr. Mitchell emphasized. When we're hurting, our instinct is often to pull away from others. But humans are social creatures. We heal through connection, not separation. Marcus knew she was right. He'd been isolating since his discharge, hiding in his apartment when he wasn't required to be elsewhere. His mother tried to draw him out, but he'd perfected the art of being physically present while emotionally absent. The class discussed different therapeutic approaches. Cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure therapy, mindfulness practices. A boy mentioned medication, and Dr. Mitchell explained how psychiatric medication could help regulate brain chemistry, when trauma had thrown it out of balance. "There's no shame in needing help," she said firmly, "whether that's therapy, medication, support groups, or all of the above. Mental health is just as important as physical health. Nobody would judge someone for going to the hospital with a broken leg. Mental wounds deserve the same respect and treatment." As the period wound down, Dr. Mitchell assigned homework. "I want you to keep a stress journal this week. Write down situations that trigger stress responses and how you handle them. This isn't for a grade. It's for your own awareness and growth." The bell rang, signaling the end of the school day. Students jumped up, eager to escape. Marcus gathered his things slowly, processing the emotional weight of the class. "Marcus, could you stay for a minute?" Dr. Mitchell asked. He'd been expecting this. Marcus approached her desk while other students filed out, their voices fading down the hallway. "I want you to know that you don't have to share anything in class if you're not comfortable," Dr. Mitchell said gently. "I know today's topic hit close to home. The administration informed me about your background, and I want to make sure this class is a safe space for you." "It's fine," Marcus said automatically. Then more honestly, "It's uncomfortable, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Avoiding uncomfortable stuff hasn't really worked for me." Dr. Mitchell smiled. "That's very insightful and very brave. If you ever need to talk outside of class, my office hours are posted on the door. I specialize in trauma recovery, particularly for young people. No pressure, but the offer stands." "Thank you," Marcus said. He meant it, even though the idea of voluntarily discussing his trauma with another therapist felt exhausting. He left the classroom and found Zara waiting in the hallway. "Survived day one," she announced cheerfully. "That calls for celebration. Or at least coffee." "You drink coffee?" Marcus did drink coffee, lots of it. Military coffee was terrible but effective. "Sure." They walked to a small cafe near the school, a cozy place decorated with local art and filled with the smell of espresso. Zara ordered something complicated with multiple shots and flavored syrup. Marcus ordered black coffee and was pleased when it actually tasted decent. "So, honest assessment," Zara said as they sat by the window. "How bad was today on a scale of 1 to 10? Marcus considered. 7, maybe 8. Nothing actually went wrong, but it was exhausting just existing around so many people. "That's fair," Zara said. "For what it's worth, I think you did great. I know half the school is treating you like a celebrity or a science experiment, which must be annoying." "A little," Marcus admitted. "I'm not looking for attention. I just want to figure out how to be a regular person again." "Well, regular is overrated anyway," Zara said with a grin. "But I get what you mean. Normal, baseline, whatever we call life when nobody's actively trying to kill you." Marcus smiled despite himself. Zara had a way of addressing heavy topics with enough lightness to make them bearable. "Yeah, that's the goal. Can I ask you something?" Zara's tone turned more serious. "And feel free to tell me if I'm overstepping. Go ahead. Do you have friends from the service? People you keep in touch with?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Some. We have a group chat. Most of my squad made it home, but we're scattered across different cities now. We check in occasionally, make sure everyone's still breathing." "Do you talk to them about the hard stuff?" "Sometimes. It's easier with them because I don't have to explain. They get it." Marcus stared into his coffee. "But it's also hard because being around them brings everything back. Like we can't just hang out without the war being this ghost in the room." Zara nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense. Shared trauma is complicated. You need people who understand, but sometimes understanding means constantly being reminded." "Exactly," Marcus said, surprised by her insight. "How do you know that?" "My mom's a therapist," Zara explained. "I've absorbed a lot by osmosis. Plus, I read way too many psychology books for fun. I'm kind of a nerd that way." The rest of the week passed in a blur of classes, cautious interactions, and exhausting effort to appear normal. By Thursday afternoon, Marcus found himself standing outside the engineering club meeting room, his hand hovering over the door handle. He'd promised Zara he'd come, but the thought of walking into a room full of strangers made his chest tight. The door opened from the inside and James appeared, nearly walking into Marcus. "Oh, you came. Awesome. Come on in, we're just getting started." The room was cluttered with half-built projects, computer stations, and shelves overflowing with components and tools. About 15 students were scattered around tables working on various designs. The comfortable chaos reminded Marcus of the engineering bay on his ship, and something in him relaxed slightly. "Everyone, this is Marcus," James announced. He's got actual spaceship experience, so we're lucky to have him. Marcus, that's our fleet of projects in various states of completion. A girl with blue-streaked hair waved from a corner workstation. I'm May, working on a communications array model, trying to figure out how to boost signal strength without frying the components. Marcus walked over and examined her design. The problem was immediately obvious. Your power regulator is too close to the transmitter. Heat buildup is probably causing failures before you hit optimal transmission. May's eyes widened. That's exactly what's happening. How did you know? Saw the same problem on a frigate. Communications went down mid-battle because someone routed the power lines wrong during repairs. We nearly lost the ship before we figured it out. Marcus pulled a pencil from May's desk and sketched a quick modification on her notes. Route it this way instead with cooling conduits here and here. Should solve your issue. You're a genius, May breathed, immediately beginning to redesign her model. James guided Marcus to the main project, a 3-foot-long model of a colony transport ship. It was impressively detailed, with separate modules for cargo, crew quarters, and engines. But Marcus spotted several design flaws immediately. The engine placement is off, he said, studying the model. In real colony ships, they're positioned here to balance the mass distribution during acceleration. Your current setup would cause serious handling problems. A boy named Kevin, who was apparently the lead designer, frowned. But that's how it looks in the reference images we found. Those images are probably artistic renderings, not actual schematics, Marcus explained. Artists make things look cool. Engineers make them work. There's not always overlap. He spent the next 2 hours consulting with various projects, offering practical knowledge that no textbook could provide. How life support systems were actually configured, why certain materials were chosen over others. The real-world limitations that theoretical designs ignored. For the first time since returning, Marcus felt completely present. No anxiety, no flashbacks, no constant threat assessment, just problems that needed solving and knowledge he could share. This was purpose without violence, contribution without destruction. This is incredible, James said as the meeting wound down. You've solved problems we've been stuck on for months. Will you come back next week? Marcus surprised himself by agreeing immediately. Yeah, I'll be here. Zara appeared in the doorway, clearly having timed her arrival to walk out with him. Told you it would be good. You look more relaxed than I've seen you all week. It helps, Marcus admitted as they walked toward the parking lot. Having something to focus on that isn't about survival or combat. Just building things, solving problems. That's healthy coping right there, Zara said approvingly. Dr. Mitchell would be proud. Speaking of which, did you start that stress journal she assigned? Marcus had started it. The entries were brief and sometimes painful to write, but he'd documented each trigger, each moment of anxiety, each small victory. Thursday's entry would note that engineering club had been the first time he'd felt genuinely calm since his discharge. The next week brought its own challenges. Derek and his crew had escalated from verbal jabs to actively trying to provoke Marcus. They'd bump into him in hallways, make loud comments about broken soldiers and PTSD cases, try to bait him into responding. Marcus ignored them consistently, which only seemed to make Derek angrier. On Tuesday afternoon, things came to a head in the hallway outside the cafeteria. Derek stepped directly into Marcus's path, flanked by 3 friends. Hey, war hero. Heard you can't even sleep without freaking out. That true? Do you cry at night like a little baby? Students in the hallway slowed, sensing confrontation. Marcus felt his pulse spike, his combat training screaming at him to respond to the threat. He forced himself to breathe, to count, to remember he was in a school, not a battlefield. Move, Marcus said quietly. Make me, Derek challenged, shoving Marcus's shoulder. Time seemed to slow. Marcus's body knew exactly how to respond to physical aggression. He could have Derek on the ground in 3 moves, unconscious in 5. The muscle memory was so strong it took every ounce of control not to act on it. Instead, Marcus stepped back, creating distance. I'm not doing this. That's right, run away, Derek taunted. Just like you ran away from the war, right? Couldn't handle it, so you came crying home to mommy. Something cold and sharp twisted in Marcus's gut. He'd lost friends in that war. Good people who'd never come home. And this privileged kid who'd never faced real danger was mocking their sacrifice. You don't know anything about it, Marcus said, his voice dangerously quiet. I know you're a washout, Derek pressed. Damaged goods. You don't belong here. A hand landed on Derek's shoulder. Tyler from gym class had appeared. That's enough, man. Walk away. Stay out of this, Derek snapped. No, Tyler said firmly. Several other students had gathered, and Marcus realized with surprise that they weren't all on Derek's side. Zara was there, and James, and even Emma from psychology class. Small crowd of support he hadn't expected. Derek, you're being a complete jerk, Zara said. Marcus served. He fought for all of us. Maybe show some respect? I didn't ask for his service, Derek shot back. Nobody asked him to play soldier and come back broken. Marcus felt something break inside him. The careful control he'd maintained all week cracked. You're right, he said, his voice hollow. Nobody asked. I volunteered. Because when the Zephron were slaughtering colonists, someone had to stand up. While you were here safe, complaining about homework and whatever other trivial problems you have, people my age were dying to keep Earth safe. So no, you didn't ask. But you sure as hell benefited. The hallway went silent. Marcus's hands were shaking, but he held Derek's gaze steadily. I am damaged. I probably always will be. War does that. But I'm still standing, still trying. Which is more than you'd manage if you ever faced anything real. He turned and walked away, his heart pounding. Behind him he heard Tyler telling Derek off. Heard Zara's voice raised in anger. But Marcus just kept walking, needing air, needing space. He ended up on the athletic field behind the school, empty in the afternoon sun. Marcus sat on the bleachers and let his hands shake. Let the adrenaline work through his system without trying to control it. Footsteps approached. Marcus looked up to find Principal Harrison, a stern-looking woman in her 50s climbing the bleachers. He tensed, expecting punishment for the confrontation. At ease, Mr. Chen, she said, sitting a respectful distance away. I'm not here to reprimand you. I reviewed the security footage. You handled that situation with remarkable restraint. Marcus said nothing, still trying to calm his racing heart. Derek Patterson will be suspended for 3 days, Principal Harrison continued. This isn't the first time he's bullied other students, but it will be the last. His behavior toward you was completely unacceptable. It doesn't matter, Marcus muttered. It does matter, the principal said firmly. You deserve to feel safe here. What you experienced in service, what you're dealing with now, that deserves respect and support, not mockery. Marcus looked at her, surprised by the passion in her voice. Principal Harrison's expression softened. My son served too. He was killed in action 2 years ago on one of the border colonies. He was 21. Her voice wavered slightly. So when I say I understand, please know that I mean it. What you kids did out there, the sacrifices you made, they matter. Something in Marcus's chest loosened. I'm sorry about your son. And I'm sorry about whatever you lost out there, she replied. Because I know you lost something, even if you survived. They all do. She stood, straightening her jacket. Take the rest of the day if you need it. I'll inform your teachers you had an excused absence. Marcus did take the rest of the day. He walked home slowly, processing everything. The confrontation with Derek, the unexpected support from other students, Principal Harrison's loss, the constant reminder that war's consequences rippled far beyond the battlefield. His phone buzzed constantly. Messages from Zara checking if he was okay, James sending supportive memes. Even Tyler, who Marcus barely knew, texting that Derek had it coming. The squad chat was active too, his military friends somehow sensing he'd had a rough day. That evening, Marcus's therapy session felt more productive than usual. Dr. Reynolds, his counselor, listened as Marcus described the week. The confrontation, the mixed feelings about standing up for himself. You maintained control, Dr. Reynolds pointed out. You used 3 weeks into his return to high school, Marcus had established a fragile but functional routine. Wake at 6, run 3 miles to burn off the restless energy that plagued him, shower, eat breakfast his mother prepared with hopeful eyes, walk to school. Survive 7 periods. Engineering club on Thursdays. Study sessions with Zara twice a week. Therapy every Tuesday and Friday. Veteran support group on Sundays. The structure helped. Each day felt slightly less impossible than the last. The nightmares persisted, but Marcus was learning to function on limited sleep. The hypervigilance remained, but he was getting better at hiding his constant threat assessment. Progress, his therapist insisted, even when it felt like barely treading water. Derek had returned from suspension quieter, shooting hostile looks, but keeping his distance. His friends still muttered comments, but without their leader's confidence, the bullying had diminished to manageable levels. Marcus had bigger concerns. Advanced physics had evolved into an unofficial mentorship with Dr. Nakamura. The teacher recognized Marcus's practical knowledge exceeded his theoretical understanding and worked to fill those gaps. They spent lunch periods discussing propulsion systems, energy conversion, and the mathematical principles underlying technologies Marcus had used but never fully understood. "You've got intuitive comprehension," Dr. Nakamura explained one afternoon, equations covering 3 whiteboards. "You know how things work in practice. Now we're building the theoretical framework to support that knowledge. Understanding the why behind the how." Marcus absorbed the lessons eagerly. This felt like armor against an uncertain future. If he understood the principles, maybe he could contribute to something meaningful. Maybe he could be more than a former soldier struggling to adjust. "Have you thought about university?" Dr. Nakamura asked during one of their sessions. "With your practical experience and the theoretical knowledge you're gaining, you'd be an exceptional engineering student." "I don't have money for university," Marcus said. The discharge benefits he'd received helped with living expenses, but tuition was another matter entirely. "There are programs," the teacher said. "Scholarships specifically for veterans, and, given your age and service record, you'd be a compelling candidate. Let me help you research options." The idea planted itself in Marcus's mind, a future beyond just surviving each day, a purpose that didn't involve combat. It felt both exciting and terrifying. English class had become surprisingly tolerable. Mr. Davies assigned projects that let students explore themes through different mediums. Marcus chose to analyze war literature, comparing fictional portrayals to reality. The project gave him permission to process his experiences through an academic lens, creating distance that made examination possible. He read books about soldiers throughout history, finding common threads across centuries. The disconnect from civilian life wasn't new. The struggle with purpose after combat wasn't unique to his generation. Even the guilt about surviving when others didn't was a burden shared across time. There was comfort in recognizing his pain as part of a larger human experience. Psychology class remained challenging. Dr. Mitchell covered topics that hit uncomfortably close to home: trauma responses, coping mechanisms, the neuroscience of fear. But Marcus found himself engaging more, asking questions, even volunteering answers when discussions became abstract. During a unit on resilience, Emma, his discussion partner, shared something unexpected. "My uncle I mentioned before? He attempted suicide last year. The war just became too much. But he survived, got intensive help, and he's doing better now. He told me that asking for help was the bravest thing he's ever done, including combat." Marcus felt that statement settle into his bones. Asking for help as bravery, not weakness. His therapist had said similar things, but hearing it from someone with lived proximity to veteran struggle made it more real. "How's he doing now?" Marcus asked. "Better. Not perfect, but better. He started working with a veteran organization, helping other soldiers transition home. Says having purpose beyond his own survival made the difference." Purpose. That word kept appearing. Everyone Marcus encountered seemed to emphasize its importance. But finding purpose when your skills were designed for destruction felt impossible some days. Engineering Club had become Marcus's refuge. The projects grew more ambitious as students realized what was possible with his guidance. They'd moved beyond models to designing actual functional prototypes. A solar panel array that could be used in developing areas. A water filtration system based on technologies used on space stations. Projects that could genuinely help people. May had become something like a friend. Her brilliant mind and casual acceptance of Marcus's quirks made collaboration easy. She never pushed for war stories, never treated him like a curiosity, just saw him as someone with useful knowledge and appreciated his contributions. "You know," she said one Thursday, soldering components on her communications array, "you could probably patent some of these modifications you're teaching us. The heat dissipation solution you showed me? That's genuinely innovative." Marcus had never considered intellectual property. Military innovations belonged to the military. But civilian applications? That was different. I wouldn't know where to start with that. My dad's a patent attorney, May offered. I could ask him about it, if you're interested. Another possibility. Another potential path forward. Marcus filed it away, not ready to fully commit but intrigued by the option. The social landscape of high school gradually became less mysterious. Marcus learned to navigate cliques and hierarchies, understanding them as tribal structures not unlike military units. Everyone had their position, their role, their identity within the larger system. He existed on the periphery, connected through engineering club and his growing friendship with Zara's circle, but not fully integrated. That was fine. Marcus didn't need popularity. He needed stability. Tyler had kept his promise about pickup basketball. Every Wednesday after school, a rotating group played in the gym. Marcus joined occasionally, finding the physical activity helpful for managing stress. The competitive but not aggressive nature of recreational sports provided an outlet for energy, without triggering combat instincts. During one game, Tyler passed Marcus the ball for what should have been an easy layup. Marcus went up for the shot, and another player accidentally elbowed him hard in the ribs. Pain exploded through his side, and Marcus's vision went red. For 3 seconds, he was back on Kepler Station. The Zephron had breached the lower levels. Close quarters combat, plasma burns and screaming. His hands moved on instinct, grabbing the other player's arm in a combat hold that could break bones. Marcus, stop! Tyler's voice cut through the fog. It's okay, accident, you're in the gym. Reality snapped back. Marcus released the terrified player immediately, stepping back with raised hands. The kid scrambled away, eyes wide with fear. Everyone had frozen, staring. Sorry, Marcus gasped. I'm sorry. Reflex, I didn't mean... Tyler stepped between Marcus and the group. He's fine, just got startled. Nobody's hurt, right? The other player nodded shakily, rubbing his arm. I'm okay. Sorry I elbowed you, man. Marcus fled the gym, his heart hammering. He'd almost hurt someone. An innocent teenager playing basketball. The control he'd worked so hard to maintain had shattered in seconds. He was dangerous. Derek had been right. He was broken, damaged, didn't belong. He ended up in the bathroom, staring at his reflection, trying to remember the grounding techniques. Name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. The door opened. Tyler entered cautiously. Hey, everyone's cool out there. Jamie knows it wasn't personal. I could have hurt him, Marcus said hollowly. I almost did. But you didn't, Tyler emphasized. You stopped yourself. That's what matters. What if next time I don't stop? The question had haunted Marcus since his discharge. What if he truly lost control? What if his training overrode his humanity? Tyler leaned against the sink. Can I tell you something? My brother has epilepsy. He has seizures sometimes, completely out of his control. For years, he avoided everything because he was scared of having a seizure in public, of hurting himself or scaring people. But his doctor told him that managing the condition meant acknowledging the risk while not letting it control his life. Marcus looked at him. That's not the same thing, isn't it? Tyler challenged gently. You've got trauma responses that sometimes trigger. You're getting help, learning management strategies. But you can't just isolate yourself forever because something might happen. That's not living. That's just existing in fear. I'd rather exist in fear than hurt someone. Then let us help you, Tyler said. Come back to games, but tell us what to avoid. Physical contact triggers you. We'll keep distance. Loud noises. We'll give warnings. You don't have to navigate this alone, Marcus. The offer felt overwhelming. Acceptance despite his brokenness. Partnership in managing his limitations. It was more than Marcus felt he deserved, but refusing seemed cowardly. Okay, he said quietly. But if I get too reactive, you guys need to stop including me. Deal? Deal, Tyler agreed. Now come on. We've still got 20 minutes of co. December arrived with early snow and the frantic energy of approaching winter break. Marcus had been back at Riverside High for 3 months, and while each day still required effort, the effort had become more manageable. Routine had transformed from constraint into comfort. The university applications consumed his evenings. Marcus wrote and rewrote essays trying to capture his experiences without sounding either self-pitying or artificially heroic. Dr. Nakamura reviewed each draft, offering gentle corrections and encouragement. Don't minimize what you've been through, the teacher advised during one editing session. But also don't let it define you completely. You're a veteran, yes, but you're also a talented engineer, a dedicated student, and someone actively working toward growth. Show them all of those facets. The personal statement for the MIT program proved particularly challenging. How do you explain enlisting at 14 to someone who'd never faced such circumstances? How do you convey the weight of command decisions made by a teenager? Marcus struggled to find words that felt honest without being overwhelming. Zara helped during a study session, reading his draft with thoughtful eyes. You're being too clinical, she observed. It reads like a military report. They want to understand you as a person, not just see your service record. I don't know how to be vulnerable on paper, Marcus admitted. Vulnerability gets you killed in combat. You're not in combat anymore, Zara said gently. That's the whole point of this application. You're showing you can transition, adapt, grow beyond what war made you. They worked together for hours, Zara asking questions that drew out emotional truth. Marcus slowly learning to articulate feelings he'd buried for survival. The final essay was raw and honest, discussing not just what he'd done but who he'd become and who he hoped to be. Engineering Club's winter project was ambitious, a functional miniature habitat dome that could theoretically sustain life in hostile environments. The design drew heavily from colony technology, and Marcus found himself explaining life support systems he'd relied on for survival. The key is redundancy, he told the team during a planning session. Every critical system needs backup, and backup for the backup. When you're somewhere humans aren't supposed to survive, single points of failure are death sentences. May was building the atmospheric processing unit. James handled structural engineering, and several newer members worked on power generation. Marcus floated between groups, troubleshooting problems and sharing knowledge. The collaboration felt purposeful, creating something that could genuinely help future colonization efforts. You know what's amazing? James said during one late session. This started as a school project, but we're actually solving real problems. Like this design could be submitted to actual space agencies. The thought hadn't occurred to Marcus, but James was right. They weren't just playing with concepts, they were developing functional solutions. That realization added weight and excitement to the work. School itself had evolved into something approaching normal. Teachers knew Marcus's limitations and accommodated them without making a spectacle. He sat where he needed to sit, left when he needed to leave, contributed when he felt capable. The flexibility made survival possible. Derek had largely backed off after the suspension, though occasional hostile glares reminded Marcus that some wounds didn't heal. But the majority of students had accepted Marcus's presence, treating him like any other classmate. A few actively sought him out for help with science homework, which Marcus provided readily. Teaching reinforced his own knowledge while building connections. The real triumph came in physical education. Coach Williams had designed modified assessments that challenged Marcus without triggering defensive responses. Solo running instead of team sports when anxiety spiked. Strength training in the weight room rather than crowded competitive games when he needed space. The accommodation recognized his needs while maintaining standards. Tyler and his basketball crew had learned to read Marcus's signals. When he was grounded and present, games were normal. When he seemed distant or tense, they adjusted. Less contact, more space, checking in without pressuring. The understanding they showed made participation possible. One afternoon during a particularly good game, Marcus made a 3-pointer at the buzzer. The celebration that erupted felt normal, joyful, uncomplicated. For those few seconds, Marcus was just a teenage boy playing basketball with friends. The simplicity of it nearly made him cry. Psychology class ended the semester with presentations on resilience. Marcus had agonized over his topic, finally deciding to discuss post-traumatic growth, the concept that trauma, while devastating, could catalyze positive change and deeper appreciation for life. Not everyone who experiences trauma develops post-traumatic stress disorder, he explained to the class, his hands only shaking slightly. Some people develop post-traumatic growth. They don't become undamaged, but they find meaning in their experiences. They develop stronger relationships, greater compassion, deeper purpose. He discussed research showing how veterans often demonstrated increased empathy, stronger values, and enhanced appreciation for life despite their struggles. How suffering, while never desirable, could forge character and wisdom impossible to achieve through easier paths. I'm not saying war was good, Marcus clarified. It was terrible, but I can acknowledge that it changed me in ways that aren't entirely negative. I'm more patient now, more grateful for small things. I understand human fragility and strength better than I did before. Those insights came at horrible cost, but they're real. Dr. Mitchell listened with tears in her eyes. When Marcus finished, she spoke to the entire class. This is what true resilience looks like. Not pretending damage doesn't exist, but integrating it into a larger identity, finding ways to grow despite, and sometimes because of, what we've endured. The presentation earned Marcus his first A+ of the semester. More importantly, it earned respect from classmates who'd been uncertain how to relate to him. Several approached afterward, thanking him for his honesty and perspective. Emma lingered after others left. My uncle read about post-traumatic growth in therapy. It helped him reframe his experiences. Thank you for sharing that. It helps me understand him better. Winter break arrived like a gift. 2 weeks without the constant performance of being okay. Without navigating complex social dynamics, without managing triggers in public spaces. Marcus could sleep irregular hours, avoid people when needed, exist without judgment. But isolation also brought dangers. Without structure, his mind wandered to darker places. The nightmares intensified when he slept too much. Memories surfaced without distraction to keep them submerged. By the third day, Marcus recognized he needed activity. He volunteered at the community center, helping Frank organize the Veteran Support Group's holiday event. Veterans and their families gathered for a potluck dinner, sharing food and stories and the complicated fellowship of shared experience. An older veteran named Margaret, who'd served in earlier conflicts, cornered Marcus near the dessert table. Frank tells me you're applying to universities. That's wonderful. I went back to school after my service. Best decision I ever made. Wasn't it hard? Marcus asked. Being around people who didn't understand? Incredibly hard, Margaret agreed. But also necessary. The military teaches you to be a soldier. You have to teach yourself to be a person again. Education helped me do that. Gave me identity beyond my service. They talked for an hour about her transition, her career as an aerospace engineer, the ways she'd integrated her military experience into civilian life without letting it consume her. Her path offered a template Marcus might follow, proof that functional futures existed beyond survival. Jackson from Marcus's squad drove up for a visit mid-break. They spent an afternoon at a shooting range, the familiar activity somehow therapeutic. Neither spoke much while shooting. The focus required prevented conversation. But afterward, over mediocre diner food, they caught up properly. I'm taking full course loads now, Jackson said. Mechanical engineering. Turns out fixing things under pressure is a marketable skill. How's the leg? Marcus asked. Noting Jackson still favored one side. Physical therapy's helping. Should be at 90% by spring. Jackson paused. I heard Thompson re-enlisted. Couldn't hack civilian life. Marcus had heard too. It didn't surprise him, though it saddened him. Some people needed the structure and purpose military service provided. Civilian ambiguity overwhelmed them. Marcus understood the impulse even as he'd chosen differently. Think he'll regret it? Marcus wondered. Probably, Jackson said honestly. But it's his path to walk. We all cope differently. They discussed Rivera's thriving animal shelter career, Davis's struggles with alcohol, Chen's new relationship, Williams's college courses. The squad had scattered like shrapnel, each piece finding different landing spots. Some impacts were clean, others messy. All were trying. You seem more stable, Jackson observed. When you first got discharged, you were barely holding on. Now there's something solid about you. Marcus considered that assessment. I found things to care about beyond just surviving. Engineering projects, academic goals, people who've chosen to know me despite everything. Purpose helps. Damn right it does, Jackson agreed. That's the secret, Nobby.